So one moment I was wondering what I was going to do on a Saturday night since my date was ending and I was getting ready to head home. But about 1 hour later, my date was dropping me off at the airport and I was on an airplane working overtime and getting overtime pay. So in this video, I want to share with you how flight attendants can choose to get called in when an airline is short on staff and needs someone urgently and get an incredible overtime pay. So here we go. Every airline has a different term for this, but for this specific situation, is basically that happens when you are not scheduled to work. So this is definitely something that's outside of your schedule. That's something that the airline will alert you if they need you for a specific moment. But it's something that you're not scheduled. It's not in your schedule. You're just enjoying your day like I was yesterday. And then you have this option and it's set up beforehand that you can get alerted if there is a situation that the airline needs you, and you can then accept that if it's something that you choose to do. So you get to review it and choose it. So let me just explain a little about how this works, because it happened to me last night and I was literally just having a good time, getting ready to end my date and figuring out it was about, 4:30. And I was like, what am I going to do for the rest of the evening? I didn't really have any plans. And so I get this little ping on my phone that said, hey, do you want to work? And I'm thinking, well, I'm not doing anything else. So I hit yes, thinking that I would never get called. So there's a couple of things, though, before you hit the yes button that you need to really consider. You can't live far away. So from the airport, because usually they need you quickly, right? It's something that you can't be in. It's say I live in St. Petersburg and I'm based in Sarasota. But since I live in St. Petersburg, I have the app set up that it can chime me for situations that arise in St. Petersburg and in Sarasota. I'm a little further away from Sarasota, which is my base, but since I'm a flight attendant, I still can apply to have these situations happen. So again, you can't live like in Miami and a flight's out of St. Pete and then they need you. Like you can't do that. So you got to live close to where the situation is happening. So also this app is on your phone. It's something that you set up, and you can choose to have the app on silent. I choose to have the app chime any time of day, 24/7. So yes, this has woken me up in the middle of the night because they do need people at all kinds of hours, depending on it, with the situation. And so what happens is when the crew services puts this ping into the app, it basically alerts you based off your chime. It chimes. You open up the app and it shows you exactly what time you need to be at the airport, your show time. And it also shows you the route and all the details you need to know. So you know exactly when you need to be there and also where you're going. So it kind of helps you make a decision. So you kind of quickly, do I want to go on this trip or do I not want to go on this trip? And you have a specific amount of time to say yes or no. So again, I think these situations happen when, the airline is short-staffed, or there's a maintenance issue with an aircraft, such as the situation that happened last night. The aircraft was in Columbus. There was a bird strike. They had to stay in the ground. All that, the crew and pilots were, on their way back to St. Petersburg. And then they were going to go out on another flight to Mid-America Airport in Belleville, Illinois, which is basically St. Louis. But since maintenance was not in Columbus, they had to fly some of our maintenance staff into Columbus to take a look at the aircraft. Well, guess what? There are people at St. Pete Airport waiting to go to St. Louis that this aircraft is no longer coming to pick them up. So now we have a situation that all the flight attendants and the crew, the pilots, are in Columbus basically waiting for this whole maintenance situation while they look at the aircraft just to make sure that the aircraft is safe. So since they were not flying in, the crew services had to find not only a new aircraft, there was one at St. Pete ready to go, but they had to find a whole new crew. Luckily, one of the pilots was getting ready to come on as a new crew member of that flight. So it wasn't the pilot, who happened to be my good buddy, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But they had to find 4 new flight attendants and a first officer. And so what happens is at around 4:30, I get this ping and it's like, do you want to go to Belleville, Illinois, or Mid-America Airport? You have to be there at a specific time. I'm like, yeah, accept. Also, just another, how this happens. This airline has a reserve list, right? So What that means is there is a list of flight attendants sitting on there on that day waiting to be called. And you might ask, well, why didn't they just call those people on the reserve list? Well, on that specific day yesterday, there's a lot of weather and mechanical issues that they exhausted all those people. They don't ever add more on a day. It's just on that day, they have a certain number of people based off of how many, how many situations they may need. And it's all based off an algorithm, right? So one day they may need 10 people, another day they may need 20 people. And it's again, based off history, based off number of flights, based off weather. And so they yesterday had exhausted this entire list on the reserve. So they did not have anybody left to call. So of course, that's when they need to go into this overtime alert system. Also, there are situations like, when you're on this reserve list, you are required to get a 90-minute call out period, which means if your show time, let's say it's 1:30 in the afternoon, they have to call you by 12 o'clock and give you 90 minutes for you to get to the gate. So they need to give you that amount of time. Well, the reserve periods are not 24 hours. So they give you a block of time that are your reserve hours. And so it might be 5 a.m. to call it 6 p.m. So you're 13, usually they're 13 hours. Again, you're not getting paid for all those 13 hours. You're getting paid for a certain number of hours, but you're sitting there waiting and they can call you at any time. Now, that doesn't mean they can call you and the flight has to be within that block. That they can call you and the flight can be later after that block. So that's just a call period. It's not necessarily the flying period, but let's say you're a 5 a.m. reserve, which means they can start calling you at 5 a.m. They can't call you at 4:59 or 4:30. But let's say they actually have a trip starting at 5 a.m. that you need to be at the gate. Well, guess what? Since all those people's reserve times start at 5 a.m., they can't call those people. So they have to put out an alert on the system to say, hey, we need you at 5 a.m. And usually it's in the middle of the night. And this has happened a lot where I get woken up. It's like ping. And I look at my phone and it's like, do you want a show time at 5 a.m. at this airport? Yes or no? Usually I don't accept those. It depends on the situation. But that's kind of the situations why they would need to actually use this alert system in the event that they actually need flight attendants. So usually you have about 30 minutes to accept or decline. And again, you don't have to click decline if you don't want to do it. By you not chiming in, again, this is all optional. You don't have to do anything. But if you click accept, what they do is they have they take those 30 minutes, whoever says yes and confirm in those 30 minutes, the crew services will take, after the 30 minutes are over, they'll take a look at all the people that said yes. And then there's a whole process of who they actually pick. So it starts with seniority. The person with the highest seniority that said yes gets the gig. If then what they do is, then it goes down to legality. There are legality issues of flying. You have to have a certain number of hours of rest between your flights. It's just the law. If you say, yes, you want this trip, but you have to work soon after that, well, they're probably not going to allow you to do that because you are scheduled to work and you can't. Or likewise, in the day before, if you ended a trip, let's say at midnight, and you found this ping that happened, they want you at 5 a.m., well, that's not 10 hours. That's only 5 hours. So you would not be eligible to apply for that. So they would just bypass you because of legality issues. The next way is base preference. So since I'm in Sarasota, but I'm saying yes for a trip out of St. Petersburg, anybody in St. Petersburg with even a lower seniority than me would get the trip over me because I'm not in base. Likewise, the reverse happens in Sarasota. Anybody in St. Pete that has a higher seniority than me would not get chosen over me because I am in base. So that's the next thing. And then anybody else after that, if that doesn't apply, which is the situation that happened last night because I'm not in base. I have a really low seniority. I technically was on reserve, but they needed somebody. They actually needed 4 of us. And so since they exhausted all the flight attendants in the reserve list and I had said yes, I got chosen. Also in the alert, they show you how much that your overtime pay is. This is the cool part. These trips, because they need you right away, could be anywhere from 200% to 250% to 300% of your hourly pay. That's a good day. So that's an incentive for you to say, yes, I want to go. The reason that the airlines pay the flight attendant more in these situations is because think about it. Like airlines are required by law, by the Federal Aviation Administration, requires every aircraft have a specific number, a minimum number of flight attendants. And every aircraft has a different number. The aircraft that we fly, the Airbus 320s, require a minimum of 4 flight attendants. If you have 3 flight attendants, you cannot have anybody board the aircraft. You have to have 4 trained flight attendants that are on the aircraft at the time of people boarding and taking off, and obviously. Well, so that's the whole idea. And think about it. The airline is more willing to pay someone 300% of their hourly rate, one person, versus canceling an entire flight, right? That's way more cost effective for them to pay someone a little bit more than canceling a flight of 180, 190 people. So, I started about a month ago, and I have been accepting all these overtime alerts. Yes, 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 because I'm low seniority, and the odds of me getting it are super, super low. But if they're desperate, like they were last night, I might get picked, which is what happened. So my story is really, I was on a date. It was a third date. I was on a date, and I was out showing him properties because he has been thinking about investing in some properties. And I was showing him different neighborhoods, and we are the furthest away from my house. And the interesting thing was he had to actually get back to Tampa to have for an obligation that he had that evening. And so we were in the process of getting ready to start driving back to my place. We were about 20 minutes away. And as we started to turn back, I got this call from Crew Services. Now on my phone, it's Crew Services, and I have a special ringtone that can ring even when my phone's on silent at any time of the day. That it's like this, nah, nah, and I know when that ringtone happens that it is Crew Services. If I'm on reserve, I got to pick up the call. If I'm not on reserve, I do not have to pick up the call, which is a whole nother, I could talk about this another time in another video. But I picked up the call because I was on reserve, and I knew I had hit accept, and I was like, oh my gosh, did I really get this? And the woman was like, hey, Corey, you were awarded the trip. Can you be at the airport in 35 minutes? And I was like, well, I'm about 20 minutes away from my house. I have to put on my uniform, and then I can head to the airport, which is about 20 minutes away. So that's 45 minutes. So I said, I'll get there as soon as I can. And usually when you are on a scheduled flight, that you have to be at the airport, so you have time to plan ahead. Again, since this is way out of system and it's something they called you about, they're very lenient. As long as you can get there within a certain amount of time, you're not going to be there. I can get there in 4 hours. But if you can get there in I don't know what the time is, it's going to be fine. I was going to be late. That I couldn't be there in 35 minutes, but I could be there in an hour. So my adrenaline's pumping, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just went into this whole mode of start driving home. I was just shocked that I actually got picked. And my date was like, whoa, this is crazy. He was all excited for me. And it was kind of why it was like this. We're on this adventure now. I was like, I got to get home. And it all worked out because he had to go home anyway. So it all actually worked out really well. I wasn't going to do anything on a Saturday night. I was kind of tired, but now my adrenaline's pumping. And so I got home in 15 minutes. Maybe there was a traffic law that, I don't know, may have or may not have been broken, but I did it safely. I got home. I quickly pulled out food out of my refrigerator. Now my date actually offered, because the airport in St. Pete is actually kind of on the way to Tampa, not perfectly, but he was so kind, and he said he would drive me to the airport, which is perfect because, again, St. Petersburg is not my base, and I don't have a parking pass, so I would have had to pay. I didn't even have time to go to the economy lot, which is $9. I would have had to park in the long-term parking lot, which I think is $24 a day, and sit my car there. I didn't have a choice. I probably didn't have time to Uber. So he offered to drop me off, which was amazing, and I didn't have to take time to park my car, walk in the airport. So he drove me to the airport. So I pulled food out of the refrigerator, got my uniform on, and 5 minutes after I'd gotten home, we are on the way to the airport. Called Crew Services and just said, hey, here's my ETA. I'm not going to be right there exactly when you wanted me to, but I'm on my way. Wanted to let you know. 20 minutes later, I'm at the terminal. I walk through security. I'm it's like the last flight of the day, and there was no one there. So normally I go through a special line, but I just told the guys, look, I'll just go through, and they checked me, and it was fine. And then, I thought I was going to be the last person there. Well, come to find out, I was the second flight attendant to arrive. 2 other flight attendants arrived shortly after I did. We all were there. The flight was slightly delayed because we were all rushing to get there. But again, this is out of system. We weren't expected. All of us about an hour ago were just going about our day. One of the girls was down and further away than I even was with her family at a family function. And she literally had just to drop everything and get in her car and start putting on her makeup as she was driving. So we made it. We got to the airport. We walked in the aircraft, did all the stuff we need to do. Um, and since it was an unused aircraft, you know, everything was ready to go for us. It wasn't an aircraft that had been used yet, but their aircraft was sitting at St. Pete ready to go. And the cool thing was my buddy Mike, he is a pilot for this airline, and I've been friends with him for a long time. And he was the pilot. He was actually the one that texted me and said, "Hey, did you get called in?" And I called him and I said, "Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe." He's like, "Yeah, I'm your captain." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's so," and I hadn't flown with him yet. So this is our first experience flying together. It was so fun. Um, you know, it was a trip to Mid-America Airport, which is in Belleville, Illinois, which is about 35 minutes east of St. Louis. And that's what I love about these airports that we fly into. We fly into these small little airports. We get in, we get out. We're not a part of a big airport. So, you know, all the people that have got on the airport went through this, you know, small little security line. And then we went to St. Louis and we flew back that same night. And you know, I just honestly love this gig. You know, I'm a marketing consultant. I have some businesses that I run. This is more of my, I call it part-time, even though I'm getting paid for a full month of work. Because I'm on reserve in all these situations, I'm not required to work because I don't have a schedule. I'm on this reserve system, which is fine for me because all of my businesses that I run, I could schedule. And then if I get called in, I can just shift to the next day. And so it really has been amazing. I love helping people. I love being around people. All of my jobs, I do Zoom calls with people all day. I don't get to interact with people. So this is amazing because I get to help people. You know, my buddy, the pilot, gave me a ride home last night. We got to, you know, chat. It was really, I was on his way home. So he dropped me off at like 12:30 at night. It was honestly like a really fun night. And it was something that I was going to probably just be sitting at home doing nothing. And this, now I got paid 300% for a trip, which was awesome. And I had a lot of fun. I got to help some people. I had some funny experiences and chats. And I had this experience to share with y'all. So that's how this overtime system really works. You know, flexibility is a must. And again, you're not required in our business that you have to do this. This is just all optional. If you want it, you can certainly decline or ignore all these things. But if you accept it, they pay well. And if you don't have any other plans, hey, and you want the extra hours, why not? So I hope this video was helpful and it just explaining, you know, what this system is like. I'll probably spend a whole nother video explaining the reserve system and what I do while I'm on reserve and this whole list of sitting at home waiting to get called. Again, it's not all the time because there's a whole process and I'll go through that, like why you might not get called that day, why you'll get called, the order of people getting called and how to monitor that. So that's a whole nother video that I'll share with you. But you know, another thing is because I picked up that trip last night, I got a lot of flying hours and I'd already had some trips for the month of July. It's July 9th. I already have had like 4 trips. I have a lot of flying hours. Well, what happens on this reserve system is that the more flying hours that you have, the lower down on this list you get. So the likelihood of me getting called out the rest of the month on reserve is very low because now I've kind of put in that time and now I can kind of, you know, plan my days out a little better. It doesn't mean that I can't get called. It just means the likelihood of me getting called is a lot lower. So love you. Thanks for paying attention to this video and sharing. If you know, I'd love for you, if you like this video, if you subscribe to my channel, I'm going to go through all these things that I'm learning as a brand new journey flight attendant. It's been so fun. Subscribe. I have a lot of funny flying stories that I share every once in a while. I mean, check out the video of me dumping water down the aisle. I mean, that was hilarious, but all these funny stories that it's just hilarious. This job is hilarious. And if you're curious about anything that I chatted about on this video, down below, just leave me a comment and I'm happy to answer it. I love chatting about this stuff. Clearly, I'm really excited about it. I have a lot of energy towards it, and there's going to be much more to come. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And you know what? We'll post some more videos coming up. All right. Have a great one. Thank you.